calendar for sure. Bleacher Report recently ranked the greatest trios in NBA history, topping the list. Of course, Jordan, Pippen, and Tony Kukoc. The trio played together during the second Bulls three-peat team. So this got us thinking about the Bulls three-peats as a team, and we bring back someone who knows what it's like to play in Chicago. One Jay Williams back here with us. Stephen A., you are up here first. Who was the better three-peat Bulls team? Was it the first or the second?
To me, it was the first. It was the first because it was Jordan at his best in his prime, and Scottie Pippen had really elevated. They were youthful, and their defensive tenacity was extraordinary. They could press you full court anytime they wanted to and wreak absolute positive havoc upon you, as they did against the Lakers, as they did against the Portland Trailblazers, as they did against the Phoenix Suns. You got to remember those teams they were going up against. Yes, you were going up against Magic, and it wasn't with Worthy and Kareem and all of those guys the first go-round, but they ultimately went through the Pistons in order to get there. The second go-round, the Portland Trailblazers, people keep forgetting how good they were. They had Drexler, they had Terry Porter and these boys, so you couldn't ignore that. And then that Phoenix team with Barkley. Yes, you had Barkley, but Kevin Johnson could really ball. Dan Marley was a big-time dude coming off the bench as well. And so when you looked at the Phoenix squad as well, I just think that I take into account all of those things and who they went against when the Knicks and Pat Riley brought bad boy basketball to the Garden, and they were going up against the New York Knicks. Reggie Miller and the Indiana Pacers were trying to ascend as well. The list goes on and on. I think the first team, because of its youth and its defensive tenacity and the three-headed monster they had I wouldn't say a monster, but they had three-headed guys or four-headed guys. You could distribute 18 to 24 fouls with Cartwright and all of those boys. I just think from a complete package, the first three-peat team was a little bit better because Jordan and Pippen were in the primes of their career, and they were better.
I actually think Pippen was in his prime the second go-round, but Jordan was absolutely in his prime the first go-round. That's the greatest player ever, and I understand why you would like that first three-peat because Jordan was in his prime. Let's not forget, the second three-peat, Jordan was a shooter now from three. He was hitting 40%, 37% in different seasons from three. He wasn't doing that the first time around, so he had added an element to his game. But beyond that, Stephen A., there are two reasons why the second three-peat was the better Bulls team, even if its best player wasn't quite as good. By the way, the second three-peat Jordan is still clearly better than anyone else who ever lived. So really, we're comparing him to himself, who's even better the first time. But you have to understand, I resent this thing where the big three, and you mentioned Kukoc. Kukoc was an excellent player. The big three was Jordan, Pippen, and Dennis Rodman, Hall of Famer, arguably greatest defensive player of all time. Really strong argument, greatest defensive player since Bill Russell, meaning of the modern era. You know who his competition is? Well, one of them is Scottie Pippen on the same team. You could argue that the three greatest defensive players at their positions, Jordan, Pippen, Rodman, were all on the same team. Rodman grabbing 17 boards a game, defending small forwards, power forwards, center, at elite levels, by the way. It was amazing. Also, Ron Harper. If people forget Ron, guys like that. Steve Kerr shooting 52% from three. Then look at, not to mention Kukoc, now look at the competition they played. They swept the Shaq Penny Magic 60-win team, swept them. And then they had to play a Supersonics team in the finals that won 64 games. They played a Utah Jazz team in consecutive finals after that had won 60-plus games. Even on the way to the finals, they were getting stiff competition from the Tim Hardaway, Alonzo Mourning Heat. But when you look at the amount of talent on the second three-peat, which is why they won 72 games one year, greatest team of all time, plus the competition that they beat, which is easily forgettable because those guys didn't win championships. But if not for the Bulls, don't forget, that Jazz team unseated, was it the Jazz or the Sonics, who unseated the Rockets, who went back-to-back in Jordan's absence. The second three-peat Bulls is the greatest dynasty and greatest team of all time.
Max, I vehemently agree with you. It's the second team. People forget that Tony Kukoc, his nickname was the Magic Johnson of Europe. My man had won multiple MVPs in Europe before he came over to play for the Chicago Bulls. And I would agree with you on Dennis Rodman. And then I would say this to you, Stephen A. Smith. Which version of yourself is the better version? The version from 20 years ago or the version right now? Can you answer that for me?
Well, I think the version right now, yeah, sure, I can do that.
Okay, so here's what I would say with Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, even though he may not have been as athletic, he was like fine wine. Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen understood how to play together. This team, you're not essentially saying who they're competing against as it relates to who they beat in the playoffs. Let's match these two teams up against each other. I like my chances with Dennis Rodman. I like my chances with Scottie Pippen and Tony Kukoc. The versatility of this team. They may not be the young Thunderbirds that they were before, but they still understand how to play the game, and they're more efficient with their energy. They're more efficient with their time. And by the way, this up here, Stephen A. Smith, that was the difference between the second three-peat team and the first three-peat team. The second three-peat team had been there, done that before. They were experienced. They understood how to maintain their bodies, and they still had that competitive will. I'm telling you, that second team with that three-headed monster of Kukoc, Pippen, Jordan, yes, add in Dennis Rodman, that was the best three-peat team of all time.
Well, listen, they both won. My position is that I'm going by the eye test. They obviously knew how to win, and they were wiser. There's no question about that. But I like the first three-peat team. That's my personal preference. When Max brings up the fact that with Dennis Rodman they were better, I don't disagree with that. But let's not act like it's so flagrant. Yes, Tony Kukoc couldn't shine Dennis Rodman's shoes on the defensive side of the ball.
So
no question about it.
You do agree with that?
But
you do agree that the second three-peat team was better? That's what you're saying? You do agree with that?
No, I don't. I said I do not. I believe it's the first. No, I didn't. I said it's the first three-peat team. It's the first three-peat team. I haven't changed my position. What I'm saying is I respect. I said they both.
Who was better?
Talent-wise, who was better? I felt the first three-peat team was. I mean, if you had Tony Kukoc and Dennis Rodman, you could look at them. But I wanted to address the point about defensively with Dennis Rodman. Yes, they were better, but offensively, Dennis Rodman couldn't touch Tony Kukoc. So to me, I look at Tony Kukoc offensively, that was a significant upgrade. Where Jordan and Pippen were dominant was on the defensive side of the ball, and I think in the first three-peat, they were even more lethal than they were in the second three-peat defensively. That's my belief. Offensively, Max, to address your point about the three-point shooting on the part of Jordan, he was actually better with the first three-peat. The first three-peat, he was consistently 38% from three-point range, somewhere around there. The second three-peat, he did 40% one year, but then another year, I think he did like 19%, and then he did. No, I wasn't talking about playoffs. I was just talking about overall. Just overall.
No, overall,
that's what I was talking about.
Overall, I think you got the numbers reversed.
Oh, okay.
Overall, Jordan never shot above 35% in the first three-peat during the regular season, as I recall, but he had a 40% and a high 30% the second time. I'll say this, someone who no one has mentioned.
Okay.
Horace Grant. Is a guy we haven't mentioned. And in the first three-peat, he was the third head of the big three, and he was an excellent player.
Yes.
He was the quintessential power forward for his time. Excellent defensively, could do a lot of things offensively, but even though he was a more well-rounded player than Dennis Rodman, let alone there was no Tony Kukoc on the first team, Dennis Rodman's deep, like people don't understand. Dennis Rodman probably has a spot on my all-time roster, even though he was limited offensively, though he could finish at the rim, actually. Like you could throw him alley-oops and stuff, and he could go on the fast break. Dennis Rodman was defensively different, guys. There's not really been you know who the closest thing to Rodman defensively has been to me? Was LeBron when he was with the Heat, the second championship, the third year. LeBron started to look all-world defensively, so versatile. Rodman did that on the regular and at a higher level. It was just different.
You're right. I was talking playoffs. You're right in terms of those numbers. My bad.
Playoffs.
It was playoffs. 38% like 3 straight years in the first three-peat, 40% one year, then 19% and 30% in the playoffs, the second three-peat.
Gotcha.
Excuse me, gentlemen. Can we get to the fan debate? Because we've been asking fans all show to send in questions, and we have one here. It's a really good one. This is from Nico Madrid. He said, "Who will win MVP first? Is it Luka? Is it Zion? Or is it Trae Young, Stephen A?"
Luka. I think with all the things that he brings to the table, along with the fact that he has the ball in his hands because Rick Carlisle has handed him the ball as the point guard for the Dallas Mavericks, I think he's in more, but he can do more than Trae Young. And obviously more than Zion Williamson. Zion is going to be impactful. He's going to be box office, no question about it. But Luka already is that as well. and he's an emerging superstar in this league, already averaging over 28 points per game. I would say it's Luka.
Yeah, I agree with Luka. Mainly for the same reason I think Zion will eventually be the face of the league. Given his age, there's more upside there athletically because his game is not as polished and he's already this good. But Luka's game is already polished. You could actually make an argument, I think you'd lose it, but he's in the MVP conversation this year. If the Mavericks had a better record, in other words, if Porzingis was fully recovered, he could win the MVP like this year on a different team. So, yeah, I think it's Luka.
Max, you don't have to make the argument. It's a fact. He was in the MVP conversation this year. He was before he got injured. He was in the conversation. And I think having Kristaps Porzingis really helps his team catapult where they are athletically. You look at, obviously, Brandon Ingram could be there with Zion Williamson, but you still want to see that more consistently from BI. And then for Trae Young, you don't know who his running mate is right now, potentially Jonathan Collins. But if you have Porzingis and you have the way this team is made up and built, if they add another piece or two, we'll be talking about Luka actually winning MVP before anybody else.
I like Trae Young a lot, guys. He is not in the category of Luka and Zion. There's a difference between an all-star, a 4-star caliber player, and an MVP level player, a 5-star. Luka's almost 5-star right now. Zion's a high 4 already, and Trae is an all-star caliber player.
I agree.
I agree.
All right, real quick, guys, since we have a minute, we asked on Twitter who will take the NBA torch from LeBron when he retires. These answers might surprise you. 56% are saying Giannis, 19% go to Kevin Durant and Zion, and Steph Curry with 6%. Stephen A., are you surprised it's Giannis by a landslide?
Wow.
No, I'm not, because I think I'm not surprised at all, because I think they're just thinking basketball. They're not thinking off the court as well, the kind of stuff that I brought into the equation, because when you grab the torch from LeBron James, I don't think you're just talking about basketball. If you're talking about basketball, I'm not surprised at all that it's Giannis, considering how young he is and how dominant he is already.
Yeah, Giannis is a point center, but when you squint, he can look like a wing player. So he might move merchandise. And even though he is foreign born, he has this big, great personality, and everyone loves him, and they can recognize he's going to be the best player in the game soon if he's not already.
I don't know, guys. If you guys have been watching TikTok, my man Giannis is starting to build up this reputation. He's everywhere right now. I'm just trying to tell you, it's coming, and nobody says he's going to be in that market of Milwaukee forever. Who knows?
The TikTok. Jay, do you have your TikTok account yet?
I'm waiting for the right post, though, Molly. I'm waiting for the right post. I got to get Stephen A. and Max on TikTok, though. We got to build up this brand, Stephen A.
Hell no, you won't. Hell no, you won't. My daughter can't get me in it. You ain't getting me in it. I ain't doing no damn TikTok.
Come on, we already
goodness.
got the baby memes. We already got the baby Stephen A. Smith. We need the TikTok Stephen A. Smith.
That's good enough.
Come on,
that's good enough.
Is so good. All right, I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. Jay, thank you for being with us. Of course, we will be back on Monday. Again, thank you to all those essential workers. We so appreciate you. John Morant is on SportsCenter next. Check out John Morant coming up in a moment. Bye, everyone. Have a